Have you ever seen someone want something so badly that it made them sick? That's exactly what happened with Amnon, one of King David's sons. He didn't want a crown or more land. No, he wanted something forbidden. He wanted his own half-sister, Tamar. Amnon was the oldest son of King David, and everyone expected him to take the throne one day. But instead of acting like a future king, Amnon let a dangerous desire take root in his heart. Tamar was beautiful, graceful, and innocent. She was also the full sister of Absalom, another of David's sons. But no matter how many women lived in the palace, Amnon's eyes were fixed only on her. He obsessed over her until he couldn't sleep or eat. His feelings weren't love, they were twisted. He didn't want to marry her the right way. He just wanted her for himself. One day, Amnon's cousin, a sly and clever man named Jonadab, noticed Amnon looking pale and miserable. "What's wrong with you?" Jonadab asked. "You're the king's son, but you look like you're wasting away." Amnon sighed. "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." Jonadab raised an eyebrow. "Is that all? That's easy to fix. Listen to me. Pretend you're sick and go lie in bed. When the king comes to check on you, tell him you want Tamar to come and cook food for you, right in front of you, so you can eat from her hands." Amnon didn't question it. He followed the plan. Later that day, he lay in bed, groaning and faking illness. King David came to see him. "My son, what's the matter?" "I'm weak," Amnon said. "If only Tamar could come make me a meal and feed me with her own hands. Maybe then he'll eat." David, unaware of Amnon's real intentions, agreed. He sent Tamar to her brother's house with a tray and instructions. Tamar went, kind and unsuspecting. She prepared the food carefully. She kneaded dough, baked cakes, and placed them on a dish. But when she tried to serve him, Amnon wouldn't eat. "Come feed me in my room," he said. Tamar hesitated, but followed. When she entered the room, he shut the door behind her. Then he grabbed her arm. "Lie with me, Tamar," he said. She froze. Her heart raced. "No, my brother," she said firmly. "Don't force me. Don't do this terrible thing. Such a thing is not done in Israel. You'll shame me, and you'll bring disgrace on yourself." She pleaded. "Please, speak to the king. He might let you marry me properly." But Amnon didn't listen. Her words meant nothing to him. He was stronger, and he forced himself on her. After it was over, everything changed. The desire he once had turned into hatred. He shoved her away. "Get out!" he snapped. Tamar, humiliated and broken, begged him not to throw her out. "Sending me away now is worse than what you've already done." But he called his servant and ordered him, "Get this woman out of here, and bolt the door behind her." The servant dragged her out and locked the door. Tamar tore her robe, the one that showed she was a royal virgin, and put ashes on her head. She walked away crying loudly, with her hands on her head. Her dignity was gone. Her future shattered. She went to Absalom's house. He looked at her, seeing the pain in her eyes. "Has Amnon been with you?" She nodded. Absalom clenched his jaw. His face went cold. "Be quiet now, my sister. Don't take this to heart. Stay here with me." He didn't say more. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. But inside, something dark and silent began to grow. Tamar lived with Absalom from then on. She never married. She was broken. And King David? He heard what happened and was furious. But he did nothing. He was the king. He was the father. But he said not a word. He took no action. And the silence was louder than any cry for justice. 2 years passed. Amnon went about his life like nothing had happened. He laughed. He drank. He walked the palace as though he were innocent. Tamar stayed hidden. And Absalom waited. Not with tears. With plans. 2 years passed. 2 long years of silence, pain, and planning. Tamar stayed in Absalom's house, living like a shadow. Her beauty faded behind sorrow. She barely spoke, barely moved. The world had moved on, but she hadn't. Amnon, the man who had ruined her, lived like a prince. He laughed with friends, ate at the king's table, acted as if nothing had happened. Absalom watched all of it. Every smile from Amnon. Every time the king avoided Tamar's name. Every time justice was denied. Absalom never confronted Amnon. He never mentioned Tamar. But deep inside, his mind was working like a hunter setting a trap. He wasn't going to let it go. He was going to strike. And no one would see it coming. It was time for the yearly sheep shearing festival, a time of celebration for Absalom's household. In those days, shearing sheep was like a harvest party. There was food, wine, music, and dancing. Families gathered. Workers rested. It was the perfect cover. Absalom came to King David and said, "Please, father, come with me to the feast. We're shearing the sheep at Baal Hazor. It would mean a lot to have you there." David smiled, but declined. "No, my son. It would be too much of a burden for you to host the whole royal court." Absalom didn't argue. "Then at least let my brothers come." David paused. "Why?" "No reason," Absalom said casually. "Just a celebration." David agreed. And without questioning, he gave his blessing. Among the royal sons invited was Amnon. Absalom watched closely as they arrived. The food was prepared. The wine poured. The music played. And as the evening went on, Absalom signaled his servants. "When Amnon is drunk and I give the word," he whispered, "strike him down. Don't be afraid. I'm giving you the command. Be brave and do it." The servants nodded. The moment came. Absalom raised his hand. And in a flash, Amnon was dead. The wine spilled. The music stopped. The royal sons leaped to their feet in terror. "Absalom has killed Amnon," someone shouted. They fled, mounting their mules and racing back to Jerusalem. Word reached King David quickly, but it was the wrong message. "All the king's sons are dead." The messenger cried. "Absalom killed them all." David tore his robes in grief. He collapsed onto the floor, stunned and shaking. But Jonadab, the same cousin who had once advised Amnon to lure Tamar, stepped forward. "My lord," he said, "don't believe that all your sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead. Absalom has been planning this since the day Amnon attacked Tamar." And he was right. Moments later, the other sons arrived, breathless and pale, but alive. David watched them in silence. But Absalom was gone. He had fled to Geshur, the land ruled by his grandfather. There, far from Jerusalem, Absalom stayed in exile for 3 years. David mourned every day, not just for Amnon, but for Absalom, too. He had lost 2 sons, one to death, one to distance. But David still did nothing. He missed Absalom deeply, but his pride, and perhaps his guilt, kept him from reaching out. In the halls of the palace, the silence stretched. Tamar's name was never spoken. Amnon's memory faded. And Absalom waited. Back in Jerusalem, Joab, the commander of David's army, saw the toll it was taking on the king. David was miserable. So Joab came up with a plan to help bring Absalom back. He went to a wise woman from Tekoa and told her exactly what to say. She dressed in mourning clothes and came to the king pretending to be a grieving mother. "My lord," she said, "I had 2 sons. They fought in the field, and one killed the other. Now the family wants to kill the one who's left, but if they do, he'll have no children left. No one to carry on the name. He'll be alone." David listened and promised to protect her remaining son. Then she turned the story on him. "Why, then," she asked, "have you not done the same for your own son? You've banished Absalom, but you long for him. Why don't you bring him back?" David realized he had been trapped by his own sense of justice. Joab's plan had worked. So, David agreed to let Absalom return to Jerusalem. But there was one condition: Absalom could return to the city, but he couldn't see the king's face. And so, Absalom came back. He walked the streets, slept in his house, ate the food of his homeland. But for 2 years, he never saw his father. Not once. This was worse than exile. To be so close, yet treated like a stranger, it burned. Absalom's pride began to match his father's. He waited for David to call him. David waited for Absalom to apologize. Neither moved. Until one day, Absalom had enough. He called for Joab. Joab didn't come. He called again. Still nothing. So Absalom did something bold. He burned Joab's field. The next day, Joab stormed into his house. "Why did you set my field on fire?" he shouted. Absalom didn't flinch. "Because I needed to speak with you. I've been in this city for 2 years and haven't seen the king. Why did he even bring me back if he won't look at me? If I'm guilty, let him kill me." Joab saw the desperation. He went to David. And finally, the king agreed. David called for Absalom. The son entered the throne room, his head bowed low. He fell face down in front of his father. David looked at him. So much time had passed. He saw in Absalom not just a son, but a man hardened by pain, pride, and vengeance. David reached down and kissed him. The family was reunited, but the damage had already been done. And the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Absalom was back. But something had changed. He wasn't the same young man who had once loved his sister and longed for justice. No, the fire of revenge had spread. It had touched more than just Amnon. It had begun to burn everything. For 2 years, Absalom had walked Jerusalem's streets like a ghost. Now, he walked like a prince. His charm returned. His smile lit up rooms. His hair, long and golden, was the talk of the town. And behind that smile, a plan was forming. Not just to hurt Amnon. Not just to punish David. But to take the throne itself. Absalom knew how to win hearts. He started small, standing outside the city gate, where people came to seek judgment from the king. When someone arrived with a complaint, Absalom would greet them kindly. "What city are you from?" They'd answer, and head nod as if deeply interested. "Your case is good and right," he'd say. "But there's no one from the king to hear you." Then he'd smile and say, "If only I were the judge in the land. I'd see that everyone got justice." People started to love him, respect him. He shook hands, hugged strangers, kissed their cheeks. He wasn't just acting like a king. He was becoming one, in their hearts. Slowly, quietly, Absalom stole the loyalty of Israel. And after 4 years of this, he made his move. He went to David and said, "Please let me go to Hebron to fulfill a vow I made to God while I was in Geshur. I promised if he brought me back to Jerusalem, I'd worship him in Hebron." David agreed, not suspecting a thing. Absalom left. But he didn't go alone. He sent secret messengers throughout Israel. Their message was simple. When you hear the trumpet, shout, "Absalom is king in Hebron." He also took 200 men from Jerusalem with him, men who didn't know what was really happening. He just wanted the presence of nobility to make things look official. Even Ahithophel, one of David's wisest counselors, joined Absalom's side. The rebellion had begun. Back in Jerusalem, David got the news. "The hearts of the people are with Absalom," a messenger told him. Hez declared himself king. David didn't hesitate. He didn't try to fight from the palace. He fled. "All of you, get up," he told his household. "We have to leave, or none of us will escape Absalom. He is coming fast. We must move now." The palace emptied. The streets that once cheered for David now watched him flee with heavy hearts. The king walked barefoot, his head covered in shame, up the Mount of Olives. Men wept as he passed. He wasn't just a father running from a son. He was a king running from his own kingdom. Absalom entered Jerusalem in triumph. He took over David's palace. He stood on the throne. But he wanted more. He wanted to humiliate his father, publicly. So on the advice of Ahithophel, Absalom did something shocking. He took David's concubines, women who had belonged to the king, and set up a tent on the palace rooftop. There, in front of all Jerusalem, he slept with them. A move of domination. A message: David is done. I am king now. But David wasn't finished. He had a plan of his own. When he fled the city, he sent another of his advisors, Hushai, to pretend to betray him and serve Absalom. Hushai would secretly feed information back to David and try to ruin Ahithophel's advice. The plan worked. When Absalom asked whether he should attack David right away, Ahithophel said, "Yes, strike now while he's weak. Kill David only, and bring the rest of the people back." It was good advice. But Hushai stepped in. "No, don't. David is a warrior. If you go now, he will crush you. Instead, gather all of Israel and go in with full force." Absalom, proud and eager to seem like a real king, liked Hushai's idea better. And that decision would change everything. David had time to regroup. He gathered forces. His men were loyal, hardened, and ready to fight for their king. The battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. And it was brutal. David's army crushed Absalom's. 20,000 men died that day. But David had given one command above all others. "Be gentle with the young man Absalom, for my sake." He didn't want him dead. He wanted him redeemed. But fate had other plans. As Absalom fled the battle on his mule, his long, beautiful hair got caught in the branches of a large oak tree. The mule kept going. Absalom was left hanging in the air, helpless. A soldier saw him and ran to Job. "I saw Absalom hanging from a tree." Job didn't hesitate. He took 3 spears and plunged them into Absalom's heart. Then 10 soldiers finished the job. They threw his body in a pit and covered it with stones. No royal burial. No honor. Just dust. News reached David soon after. A messenger arrived, smiling. "Good news, my king. The Lord has given you victory over those who rose against you." But David asked just one thing: "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Another messenger came, more cautious. "May all your enemies be like that young man." And David knew. Absalom was dead. He broke. He walked up to his chamber above the gate and wept. "Oh, my son Absalom! My son Absalom! If only I had died instead of you!" He cried aloud. The victorious army, hearing their king's pain, returned not with cheers, but with shame. The victory meant nothing, because David had lost his son. Time passed. David returned to Jerusalem as king. The city welcomed him, but everything was different. The family was broken. Tamar never married. Amnon was gone. Absalom was gone. David grew older, wiser, sadder. He never fully recovered from the choices made, not his own, not his children's. This story, hidden in the shadows of Scripture, is not one of fairy tale heroes. It is a tragedy of power, lust, silence, and vengeance. And a reminder: when justice is denied, pain finds a way to speak. Make sure to subscribe for more deep Bible stories like these. Thank you.